Okay, welcome back to the notes video. This should be one of your stations in your rotation this week. We're going to start with our journals, and I want us to go to the front table of contents. We are, of course, still in Unit 1, and the notes today are going to be on multiplying and dividing fractions. Multiplying and dividing fractions. That is going to start on page 2, and it might take more than one page, so I'm going to write it a tiny bit to the left, and we might have to put 2 and 3. So we will cross over to page number 2. Remember, if you have not done the station for the lesson 1 notes, please make sure that you leave the first page behind your table of contents open, so you will be able to do that. You actually won't even have a table of contents yet. That will be okay. Make sure that you save your very first page in your journal to be your table of contents and page 1. So the second page in your journal, we're going to label it with a 2. This is page 2, and this lesson is on multiplying and dividing fractions. I don't mind if you abbreviate. I am going to go ahead and write it out, but if you just want to put the multiply and divide symbol, that is fine. Multiply and divide fractions. Okay, so there's a couple of notes that I want to start with, so I'm going to write notes. Now, one thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to talk a lot about numerator and denominator. So let's put what we're going to abbreviate that with. Numerator, I will be abbreviating with a capital N. That is the top number in the fraction. Please write that down. Denominator, the denominator I will abbreviate with a capital D, and that is the bottom number. Okay, so the numerator is the N, the denominator is the D. So the rule that you need to know to multiply fractions is you're going to multiply straight across. Let's write that really big. Multiply straight across. That's the main rule. That's almost the only rule. There's a couple of things that come into play here and there, but if you know you multiply numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, that's what you need to know. So I'll do an example here. It will be right before I get to the example, I do want to let you know, let's just underline that, super important, multiply straight across. Now, you're going to, let's put a little star, reduce first when possible. It makes it a lot easier to reduce in the beginning than it does at the end. Your numbers are smaller before you multiply than they are after. So reducing means to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number. And it has to be evenly. It has to be a number that they can both divide by evenly with no remainder, no decimal, no additional information. When another note that we'll put here is when you have a whole number, and I'm going to give an example of this in just a minute. When you have a whole number, you simply add a 1 in the denominator spot. Okay, you simply add a 1 in the denominator spot. Okay, so for an example, let's start with an example of that one first. We are going to, let's do our example. Okay, so our example is going to be 4/5 of 10. Now, the word of is going to tell us here to multiply. The word of does mean multiply. So 4/5 of 10. So first thing I do is I notice that I have a whole number. So I need to go back to my notes and I need to refer. Simply add a 1 in the denominator position or the spot. So I'm going to rewrite over here 4/5, and I can put the times symbol now of 10 over 1. Notice how I changed my whole number to a fraction simply by adding a 1 in the bottom position. Another thing I want to talk about real quick is that there's other ways to write multiply, and I will do that in this lesson just so I can show you. Okay, so then I want to go back to our first note that we put. Reduce the first number, reduce first when possible. Okay, well, let's look. That means to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number evenly. Now, I know that you would think that I'm only speaking of here to here, this numerator and this denominator, but that is not true when you multiply and divide fractions. You can do this numerator and this denominator together. So I look and I say, can 4 and 5 both be divided by the same number evenly? Well, the only thing that 4 can be divided by is 1, 2, and 4 evenly. And the only things that 5 can be divided by is 1 and 5 evenly. So dividing it by 1 isn't going to change our answer, so that won't help us at all. It has to be a number greater than 1. But when I look at the 10 and I look at the 5, I can divide 10 by 5 and I can divide 5 by 5. So I'm going to do that now. So I'm going to say 4/5 times, this is another way to write times. This is the most common way that you will see me write it throughout the year. Times 10 over 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the top and the bottom both by 5. Divided by 5 and 5. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to bring my answer this way. 4, and I say 5 divided by 5 is 1, times 10 divided by 5 is 2, and then I just carry my 1. I divided my numerator and my denominator both by the same number. Okay, so I've simplified my fractions and I made this a lot easier. So now I'm going to go back to my number 1 rule, multiply straight across. Okay, so 4 times 2 is 8, and 1 times 1 is 1. So 8 over 1, or 8 divided by 1, is simply equal to 8. Okay, that's our first example of multiplying fractions with whole number and reducing. I think I'll do one more of those. Let's draw a quick line. And we're going to do 2/3 of 6. Okay, so I'm going to write 2 divided by 3 times 6 over 1. Okay, so now I'm going to come down and I'm going to divide straight across. Okay, so 2/3 times 6 over 1. And one thing I want to check is if I can reduce. Can I divide 2 and 3 by any other number than 1? And I know that I cannot. And now I'm going to ask myself, can I divide 6 and 3? And I know that I can. So I'm going to have to reduce those numbers. And I can change it right here. I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator both by 3. So I'll change my fraction to 2 over 1 times 2 over 1. 2 times 2 is 4, and 1 times 1 is 1. 4 divided by 1 is equal to 4. Okay, thank you.